Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. We're going to get started with today's webinar, which we've specifically put together for the Partners in Preservation sites. Today we'll be talking about how to build a bigger fan base. And really, if you think back to the first webinar we did, looking more in depth at some of those recruitment strategies to use tools like Facebook and Twitter to help you build up a bigger base so that once the campaign actually launches, you'll have that many more people that you're in a strong position to engage and activate, as we've also talked in the past. My name is Darian Rodriguez-Heyman.
And I'm Ritu Sharma.
And together we are the co-founders of Social Media for Nonprofits. We produce conferences all around the country focused on social media for social good, and in fact, all around the world now. So we're going to get into it really quickly, just in terms of context. In terms of how we're here to help, we're doing two things predominantly. This webinar series as well as one-on-one coaching, all of which American Express is graciously underwriting. So it's all available at no charge to you. We've already done, this will be our fourth webinar of 5. And you can see links in the email that Siri sent out for the first one we did on hold on a second. So these are the upcoming ones. Today is building a bigger fan base, and then also on Friday we'll be talking about Storify, Pinterest, Instagram, and Tumblr. The 3 that we've already done have been sent out as links, and we'll be sending out yesterday's shortly as well. So you can certainly access any of the ones we've already done. As I mentioned,
we're also going to provide one-on-one coaching. These are 60-minute calls that we discuss your demographic, your strategy, and including more social elements in your strategy. Sometimes when you do group activities, not everybody has a chance to share everything they're doing and get individualized feedback. So these coaching sessions are really targeted towards that. You get an opportunity to share what you are thinking in terms of your strategy, and then you and us together work on figuring out how to make it more social and fine-tune it. So that's a really good 1 hour that you could use to fine-tune your strategy for the PIP campaign on the contest.
So let's get into it. Again, our focus today is on how to build a bigger fan base.
We'll cover Twitter, Google AdWords, Google+, strategic partnerships, and Facebook ads for fan acquisition.
So that's really what we're going to talk about in today's agenda. So starting off, we wanted to talk about Twitter. We took a pretty deep dive into Facebook into some of the past webinars. And Twitter, for those of you that don't know, it's not quite as popular as Facebook. Facebook has had over 850 million people log on in the last 30 days. Twitter's about 250 million, 250 million, but still quite active. And of course, you're probably aware that this is a tool, sort of a micro-blogging tool it's referred to as, where you can post up to 140 characters at a time. You know, to the extent you're already getting on Twitter and you already have a presence there, you know, we'll talk a bit today. We talked before about hashtags. So how do you actually build up your base of followers on Twitter? There's people out there. Lady Gaga has more Twitter followers than the entire population of Sweden. So how do you do it, especially if you don't have a voice like that? Well, number one is about obviously setting up your presence, but then letting people know that you have a Twitter presence. Whether that's through signage, whether that's through inviting people to follow you, whether that's through including links on your website, your newsletter, etc. That's the most important thing, and certainly the lowest hanging fruit.
And we'll get into the details of each of these points in our next slide. But key points are promote your Twitter presence, build your presence and base, identify and follow key influencers, and using Twitter lists. And we'll jump right into each of these.
So as I was saying, you know, in terms of promoting your Twitter presence, which is really the first step in this process, the key here is really to let your audience know that you're active, whether that's someone who's walking into your museum or receiving your newsletter in the mail or via email. They need to understand that you have a presence there with a link or with your ID so that if they're active on Twitter, they can certainly follow you. And as I mentioned, just basically look to promote your Twitter presence on as many different locations as possible. Your website, your newsletter, any marketing materials you're sending out, signage around the physical building, whatever the case may be. Obviously, nobody knows your organization better than you do.
So these are a couple examples. This is something on a website that somebody posted on promoting their Twitter presence. I'll show you a couple other examples. This on your right-hand side is one of the most effective ways of promoting your Twitter presence. This not only tells somebody, and by show of hands, if you can show me, if you are looking at the area I'm pointing out, this Twitter feed. Good. I see a couple, so I'm going to roll my mouse over it. This by far is the most active, most efficient way of doing this. And why this is effective is not only does it tell your audience that's coming to your website that you are active on Twitter and you have a presence, it shows them a happening conversation, and that encourages people to jump in. It's like everybody wants to jump in an active conversation, but if there is no conversation, people just look at it and kind of pass by. But this is really a glimpse of what's in it for them or what's in store for them, an active community of engaged people who believe in the same cause. So this you can get on Twitter if you go to Twitter widgets. If you just Google Twitter widgets, it will take you to a number of these widgets that you can choose. You can choose the height, the width, number of tweets you want to see, and just the general appearance of that widget. We highly recommend putting something like that on your website, especially in the Connect pages or on pages that that involve engagement. How do you build your presence? You create an account and you get online and you're posting little updates, but you only have 100 or 200 people that are following you, or maybe 500 people. How do you go about getting thousands of people? There's a lot of strategy to it. Let me say before we get into how to get into that, know that Twitter has a 2,000 person follow limit. So you can freely follow however you choose to follow people up to you build up to 2,000 people. Once you get to 2,000 people that you are following, you can only follow more people if at least that many people are following you. So if you want to follow somebody that's your 2,000 number 2001 follower, a person that you are following, sorry, you have to have at least 2,000 people following you. So with that in mind, we'll get into what are some basic things to do to build up your presence. Follow all the national and regional groups with similar focus. So if you are working in a very narrow focus, find organizations, and you may already know these people who are thought leaders or well-known established institutions in your industry in the exact demographic, even though they may be regional or in Chicago or in California or something. Any organization you can find that has a similar demographic, you follow those people. And the reason for following people is good 30 to 40% of people will follow you back. But you only want to follow people that you have a strategic and meaningful alignment with, because you don't want to follow just 2,000 random people and exhaust your quota with people that, number one, don't care about you, have no connection to your organization or to the field in general. Then once you follow these people, you get into their accounts and see who they are following. And that's a great way to go about finding who to follow, because you can find out the national and regional groups, but then you go into each of their accounts and look at who they're following, click on the profile. It shows you a very small brief of where they're based out of, what's their bio like. Anybody that has a clear bio that speaks to the same demographic that you serve, or speaks to your issue area, you start following those people, and a good chunk of them will follow you back. And that's how a good 30 to 40%, because now they see you're also a preservation site, they're also a preservation site. They work in ships, you work in ships, so there is commonality, and that's what makes them follow you back, and that's what helps you get relevant followers. And then you get into Twitter recommended lists. Twitter has a number of, when you log in now, Twitter has quite similar to Amazon.com. It will show you people you should be following. It shows you recommended people to follow, and it comes up with those recommendations based on your profile, people you are following, and people that are following you. So going to Twitter recommended list, it's on the right-hand side of your screen when you log into Twitter. The other thing to look at, besides following the national groups, their relevant followers, you look into their lists. So people who are very active and established in Twitter and who have the same demographic and focus as yours, you look into their followers, but you also look into the list either that they are part of or lists that they have created if it's a public list. In Twitter, you can segment people by lists. You can go into your homepage, and on the right-hand side, there's an option.
And we're going to get into Twitter lists later in this presentation. But you know, the key point here is really follow to get followed. As Ritu said, 30 to 40% of the people that you follow are going to follow you back. So be strategic, and this is a great place to invest time and energy, is just identifying people to follow. The other thing here, as you see the last point on your screen, is it's also equally important, especially once you reach that 2,000 person limit or start getting close to it, to unfollow irrelevant people. Especially if you followed them a while back. If they're going to follow you back, they already have. And if you're reaching your limit, you need to start trimming the fat, as it were. And so removing people who might only have a small presence, maybe aren't directly and squarely interested in your issue, or at least tweeting about that, that's a great way to free up some space so you can follow more people. So another way to get followers when it comes to Twitter is to identify and to follow key influencers. And you know, there's some misconceptions about what a key influencer is on Twitter. And you know, in general, it's not enough. You're not considered a key influencer if you just have a lot of Twitter followers. Really, the key influencers are the thought leaders of any given field. So reporters are a really great example of that, or bloggers in the online space. Any kind of academics or thought leaders, you know, people that are sort of pushing the envelope, writing the content about the field. And these are really important people to start to chum up with and buddy up with. And Twitter is a phenomenal platform to do that, because you can see their stream of consciousness. You can give them feedback on their recent article or on their recent blog or their recent research paper, and you know, share some of your thoughts and establish yourself as an authority in the figure, as an authority in the field. And so this tends to be a really effective mechanism for establishing oneself in a field. But also, a lot of these people, even though by definition they don't necessarily have a big audience, a lot of them do, especially the reporters and bloggers. So what you want to look for in terms of the key influencers that you're looking to identify and follow and start to establish a relationship with over time is, do they have a big base of followers, number one, and number two, how focused on your topic, whether that's arts preservation, whether that's gospel music, whether that's whatever the case may be, you know, are they really squarely focused on writing articles about the arts in general, or is it about your particular subgenre, if you will? And the more target you can get and the bigger their audience, the more desirable these key influencers are. And in general, as I mentioned, the strategy for these key influencers is, number one, to identify who they are, whether that's by, you know, reading their column in the New York Times or reading their blog or whatever the case may be, and then following them on Twitter. But most importantly here is the cultivation piece. It's, you know, it doesn't help much to know that, you know, who the New York Times columnist is that covers your beat. You want to start following them. You want to start commenting on their posts, retweeting their things, you know, asking them questions based on what they've written, etc., and engaging them in a dialogue.
And I want to add something to that, to the key influencer. So what does it get you by having a dialogue, by engaging these people? Well, when time comes, you can ask them, can you retweet or post about our contest, or ask for support. But if you just reached out of just called somebody and said, hey, can you retweet? They may or they may not, but if they have a rapport with you, they've seen you as a, you know, somebody who has a meaningful conversation with them, that reads their material. People are looking for feedback, especially anybody that's doing public writing or art or something. So what's in it for you? Why should you do it, and how should you do it? And the key is, if you follow them, engage with them on an ongoing basis, when it's time for you to ask whether it is to have a write-up done by them, whether it is for them to retweet your tweet and broadcast to their bigger audience, they are way more likely to do that if you've had a meaningful connection. And that's how you go viral, and that's how you get your message in front of a bigger audience.
Yeah, these are key allies to get. That's a really great point, Ritu. Thank you for adding that.
Okay, and we're going to get into lists now. Twitter lists, how many of you are familiar with what are Twitter lists? And have you seen it? If you can show me by a raise of hands.
So if you're using Twitter lists or if you're familiar with them,
or if you've seen
hit
what
the
it
raise
looks
hand
like.
button. Looks like Amy is in the loop here. And Dennis, excellent. Okay, so we've got a couple folks.
Okay. What we'll do is, after this slide and a couple slides later, what we'll do is we'll try and go live and show you where the Twitter list is on a Twitter account. And we'll have it teed up for you, but we'll show you where the Twitter list is, how to find it, and how to create one. But there are two types of Twitter lists. One is a private list, and the other is a public list. A private list is where you can create different lists of people as you add them or as you follow them, or you can go to your list of people that you're following and put people in lists. The private list is where you have it, only you see it. And a public list is you let these people and the world know that these people are in that list. So what are common examples of lists? Key influencers in arts area, key influencers nationally, key influencers regionally, competitors. Competitors list is usually a private list. By creating a list, you can just click on the list link, and it shows you what people in that particular list are talking about. So you don't have to go and click on each of the accounts. You can group these accounts by competitors, partners, staff, and it just allows you to consume this information in a much more organized way.
Yeah, and I think that's the key point here is the value of these lists is to the point Ritu just made at the end there, that they allow you to say, okay, what are my competitors talking about or thinking about right now? Let me jump over to those key influencers, some of those reporters, or let me see what my staff is buzzing about today, etc. Let me see what the other partners in preservation sites are all talking about today. These are all things that you may be able to get a glimpse of, and Twitter lists are a really great way to do that.
So it's a productivity, Twitter lists are a productivity tool. They're great for keeping on top of influencers, and what I recommend is every week or every 2 or 3 days you get into that list and look at what they're talking about, and it takes about 10 to 15 minutes total to comment a few and retweet or favorite that and get attention from these people that you're reading their material. Definitely take advantage of other people's lists. So you're going to put in time. It is usually a couple hours at least to create and set up all your lists, but take advantage of what other people have created in public lists. If it is TV journalists in the New York area, it is print authors in New York area, look at all these lists and follow these lists so you don't have to create every single one. But definitely take advantage of the ready-made ones as well, other people's lists.
So let's get into the how-to. And what we've done here, as Ritu mentioned earlier, we've put together basically just screenshots walking you through in detail the process of creating Twitter lists. So here you see a screenshot from my own personal Twitter profile. And as you could see here, when you click the little icon of the man or the woman with short hair, but I'm thinking it's a guy. So when you click the man, you see this drop-down menu right here. And basically all you're going to do is click where it says lists. And then that is what starts this whole process here. Once you do that, you're going to see this box here, whether you're not a member of any list yet or which list you're part of. And you can, of course, as Ritu said earlier, create a new list. So the point is you don't necessarily want to reinvent the wheel if you're following New York journalists, like she said. But if you're creating a new list that maybe isn't as common and you can't find, yes, it might take a few hours to create multiple lists, but to create one list can be a pretty straightforward process.
So enter the name of your list less than 25 characters. It can begin with a name, with a number, sorry. Enter a short description, select a public or a private option, and save lists. It's a very straightforward and self-explanatory
Yeah,
process.
so it's definitely a really easy process, and these are just some general guidelines in terms of what's allowed and what's not allowed to make it as simple and as easy as possible for you. You can have a new list up within 5-10 minutes, depending upon how many people you want to add to it. But of course, the real value is in curating that list and making sure you keep it vibrant, you keep it updated, and that you actually use it. So now we're going to transition into Google platforms. And by show of hands, how many of you are using any of the Google platforms aside from just simple Google search? Whether that's Google Grants, whether that's Google Analytics, Google Checkout. Okay, great. It looks like Amy's taking advantage of some Google platforms. Anybody else? Dana, excellent. Michael, okay, great. So we've got some folks here. Well, I'm going to talk pretty briefly about a couple of the different key platforms, including Google Plus and Google Grants in particular. But basically, if you go to google.com/nonprofits, you will see some pretty helpful information and some great free resources. And you can apply, as you see here, for a variety of different things, whether that's Google Grants, which we'll talk about in a second, Google Analytics, which you can get for free. You can get your own YouTube for Nonprofits channel, free access to Google Checkout, Blogger, Website Optimizer, etc. A lot of really great tools, and this is the page you'll see when you first get here. So certainly quite a bit of resources, which they actually just updated a week ago at the Nonprofit Technology Conference. So now, in addition to just information on how to apply for the different products, Google Earth, etc., now there's actually some tutorials and some videos that you may find helpful. So let's get into some of those tools in particular. By show of hands, are any of you using Google Grants or Google AdWords? All right, Amy's on that board, so is Alyssa and Kira, wonderful. Well, this is sort of one of the Jedi mind tricks, one of the coolest secrets of the nonprofit sector that people don't know about that I'm about to share. And basically, what most people don't know is that 75% of the nonprofits in this country, there's over 1.5 million of us, have budgets underneath $75,000. So for the most part, it is a vast grassroots sector. Well, what if you could double your budget with about 15 minutes of your time? And Google Grants is a great way to do that, because basically just by going to google.com/grants, you can apply, and it's a very simple application process. You can apply for $10,000 a month of free Google AdWords. And Google AdWords are the search results that you see, how those, those sponsored search links, how there's sponsored search links at the top of every search results page. So imagine having a $120,000 advertising budget at your disposal. This is a really phenomenal and underutilized resource. So again, in terms of what it is, you get access to $10,000 a month of free Google AdWords. And basically, you buy these in an auction format. This is not money you can use anywhere. It's kind of company store money that can only be used on Google for AdWords. And the other big limit here is that you can only bid up to $1 per click. So that means you're not going to be getting words like homelessness or or AIDS. You're going to have to embrace what are called long tail keywords. So that might be New York City homeless kitchens, or jazz museums in Manhattan, whatever the case may be, but something that's probably going to be longer than just 1 or 2 words, so that it is a little bit more obscure and the bidding won't be as high because they're not as popular. The good news is those words tend to be more targeted, and so your response rates and conversions on the back end are going to be higher. And ideally, you're going to want to come up with a list of at least 300 keywords and phrases that you can use for your Google Grants. So there is some time up front associated with establishing your campaign in order to make the most of it and use as much of that 10K as possible. And really, the last big point here is that the goal of Google Grants fundamentally is to increase website traffic. And whether you're driving people to the Partners in Preservation voting site, whether you're driving them to your Facebook page so that they can vote there, whether you're taking them to your main website so that they can support your organization in a variety of different efforts, this is really a phenomenal tool. I mentioned that the startup process is really quite straightforward. It's really only about 10 or 15 minutes, and I think I know one nonprofit, as long as you're a registered 501c3, they pretty much always say yes. Oftentimes there is about a 6-month lead time, though. However, if anyone wants to contact me directly, I do have some friends there that may be able to expedite your application. You should absolutely plan not only for some time associated with starting up your campaign, coming up with those 300+ keyword phrases, etc., but also, ideally on a monthly or every other month or and no less than every 3-month interval, you want to schedule 2 or 3 hours to get into the analytics and see what's working, what's not, organize different campaigns within your effort, and that optimization will really help to drive performance. If you're successful at this, and if you actually max out and spend the entire $10,000 a month, which I was able to do when I was the executive director at Craigslist Foundation, then you can put in another application to basically be like a Rockstar super account where they give you up to $50,000 a month of company store money on Google for AdWords, and you pay only 5 cents a dollar for each dollar you use above and beyond the 10K per month. So they're really generous, and this is a hugely underutilized program. A new thing that you may have heard of is Google+. So let's just do a quick show of hands. How many of you as individuals or as organizations are active on Google+, and are using this platform for your organizations? All right, crickets. I had a sense that that would be the case. We actually, at our last New York Social Media for Nonprofits conference at the end of January, we hosted Google's first public talk on how Google Plus could be leveraged and harnessed by nonprofits. So I'm going to share just a couple initial ideas and thoughts about this, because it is a pretty powerful platform that makes a lot of opportunities available. And in general, especially when you're in the social media landscape where things are happening so quickly, anything a nonprofit can do to position itself as innovative and future thinking is really going to be beneficial. So first of all, as you probably know, Google Plus is a new social network. It's been growing very quickly. It's growing even faster than Facebook grew when it first started. So it's already up to about 100 million people that are on it. There are certainly no shortage of organizations and people trying to figure out exactly what it's good for. And so that's what I wanted to focus briefly on here. And in general, the way that Google Plus works is it's organized via circles, so that you have your friend circle, your coworker circle, your partners in preservation circle, your donor circle, etc. Because the whole point is you want to communicate differently with different audiences, and you might tell your mom and your family that you had a great trip to to San Francisco recently when you came out to see me, and how you did a lot of work and got a lot accomplished. Whereas you might tell your friends that you went out dancing and had a great time, etc. So it's all about sharing the right content with the right people. And this whole concept of circles actually does exist in Facebook, but it's really not emphasized as much there, whereas it's a core component of what Google Plus is all about. So how do you get started with Google Plus? Number one is creating a Google Plus page. It's free. It's pretty quick. You've probably been invited by other people in your network. But then once you have a Google Plus page, just like we were talking about with Twitter, you're going to want to link your page to your website, to your campaigns, etc. And then finally, you're going to want to promote your page with badges, with offline marketing, what have you. And the point here is, again, as we talked about in the very first webinar, the biggest pitfall that you want to avoid with any social media outlet is what I called the empty store phenomenon. You don't want to get into something if you're not committed to maintaining a vibrant presence there. So if you're not really serious about this and able to commit at least, maybe an hour a week then I would encourage you to focus your efforts on Facebook, on Twitter, and on the platforms where you are really committed. But if you're going to use Google+, there's a few different cool things you can do. Number one is Google+ Hangouts, and this is pretty interesting. It's a free video conferencing and broadcast tool, which Skype does have built in as well. But this has it, sort of dialed into the social network.
And Skype is actually not free. For group video conferencing, you have to pay extra for that. And in Google Hangouts, you could just have a video conference with people in 4 different parts of the world, all talking like they're live, and no extra software needed, nothing, and no charge. It's all free.
That's a great point, Ritu. The other thing with Hangouts is that you can set it up as a virtual classroom for up to 10 people, and that's also free. So another pretty great platform that is made available. So, I mentioned the whole focus on circles, and one group, Pencils of Promise, has organized their circles into, their fundraising contacts, who are the experts in their field of education, their donors, and then the press. So they're probably going to want to communicate different messages in different ways at different times with each of these circles. If you're setting up your circles, you could see they've made it pretty intuitive and pretty simple, where you've got the different circles. You can change the names of those. You can just drag and drop people into circles or create a new one.
And that's what is really interesting about Google+, is the ease of use. It's very easy to use. It's very easy to organize people. And it's very effortless, which is sort of the big criticism for Facebook. And this is why it's growing as fast as it's growing in professional circles and people who are in the professional sector.
So I mentioned Hangouts a second ago. This is an example. I've got a couple examples in here, just really briefly. They were doing something around a peace lecture with Desmond Tutu and with the Dalai Lama. And it was really interesting. They had a Google Hangout where they had videos of both of them just chuckling and laughing and talking to each other and talking with the home audience and interacting with them. And it's pretty interesting because you'll see, this was obviously posted to YouTube, as you can tell by the interface, and they got an additional 50,000 people, to check it out via YouTube. So really, because Google owns YouTube, there's some overlap and potential there. A more fun example, and for those of you in the arts, when the Muppets movie came out, the Muppets actually hosted a hangout where they were talking with different fans around the world. They had webcams set up in different locations, and people could jump on and talk to Kermit, talk to Miss Piggy. Pretty cool. So if you are in the arts and working with famous artists, this could be a really powerful opportunity and platform for you. Another thing you can do with Google in Google for Nonprofits, and if you go to google.com/nonprofits, you'll see the websites that I mentioned earlier, is that you can see that your connections, the people that you're connected to on Google+, what they've +1'd, which is the equivalent of Facebook likes. So if you give something a thumbs up, then when some of your contacts and colleagues, people you're connected to, are searching, if something in the search response page has been liked by one of their contacts, it'll say that. So this is a pretty cool opportunity for you to go encourage your board, encourage your staff, encourage your key allies, your campaign captains, if you're able to implement that solution, which we've talked about, to like you on Google, so that when people are searching for you, they'll see that somebody has liked you, and they're that much more likely to click on it. So now, finally, we really wanted to head into strategic partnerships, since this has such a tremendous opportunity to catapult the work of many of your organizations forward, especially as it relates to the Partners in Preservation campaign. So first off, in terms of prospecting and trying to identify who are the strategic partners we should be working with, some of this overlaps with the people that Ritu was talking about, who you should follow on Twitter as key influencers. Those national and regional organizations, maybe some media publications, etc. But ideally, especially as it relates to a strategic partnership, you don't want to go in cold. You want to start you want to more deeply engage an organization that you're already working with, so that there's an existing partnership, there's a history there, they know about your work, they're connected to it. That is absolutely the lowest hanging fruit. So if it's a group you've already partnered with or they've supported you in the past, how can you make that partnership more strategic, more beneficial, especially around your Partners in Preservation campaign? Beyond that, when you kind of go one step out, again, this has some overlap with the key influencers, some overlap with donor prospecting and what have you, is looking at, who are the people in your extended network, or at least that you know of, that are connected to your organization. Maybe it's directly or indirectly because they have a staff or a board member in common, or because they really care about the cause and have been to some of your galas in the past, etc. But almost more importantly is their capacity. And that can be defined in different ways. Maybe you need someone with a lot of time to do some heavy lifting. More likely than not, for Partners in Preservation, it's not so much their time or their financial resources you're looking for, although both are always helpful. It's really their social media connections. Is somebody connected to 50,000 Brooklyn hipsters? Or is somebody connected and has 100,000 followers on Twitter, all of which are looking to be plugged into the art scene in Manhattan? Whatever the case may be, if they have an audience of people that is quite large, then they are in a great position to use their megaphone and say, hey, everybody who's following me, I encourage you to follow my lead and vote for Organization X so that they can win $1 million and revolutionize the art scene in the Lower East Side, whatever the case may be. And finally, you see in a lot of those examples that I used, I wasn't just saying 50,000 followers or 100,000 followers. I was saying people that care about, what's happening in Brooklyn or the arts in Manhattan or jazz music in Staten Island, this final piece of alignment. So in an ideal world, you would find someone who's already got some connection to your organization, knows who you are and the value you offer to the community. They have a huge number of followers, and they're blogging or posting or tweeting about the issue that you represent. That is the ideal scenario. And then obviously anything beyond that, if they've got a lot of followers but it's focused on a different market, hey, especially if they're really well connected to your organization, then maybe they can send out a couple tweets or Facebook posts. And in general, just like the campaign captains that we've talked about in a few different webinars, because this is probably one of the most effective ways to engage some key supporters, when you're working with these strategic partners, never, ever, ever forget that they are busy, that they've got core work to do, and you don't want to detract from that. So this whole management philosophy of low touch, high value, how can they transform your efforts? How can they help you win $1 million with 5 minutes a week? Doesn't sound like a lot of time, but hey, if you make it easy for them, if you send them one email a week with here's the 3 things we want you to do, invite, send out an email to your list, go to our Facebook page and like, comment, or share at least 3 of our posts, retweet 2 links at our Twitter profile, here's a link to that, etc. And in an ideal world, what you would do, if it's not too much for to ask of your partners, is you would create a customized marketing plan for each of them, so you know what to expect, you know what materials they're going to need from you, whether that's a blog post or template copy for email, template tweets or Facebook posts, etc. And you can get that to them up front, all at once, or at least with plenty of notice, so you're not contacting them in a frenzy saying, oh my God, can you please retweet this today? So just being really respectful of those relationships. To the extent you can look at any kind of co-marketing campaigns, whether that's with a corporate partner or other nonprofits in a shared area or shared region, possibly if there's a national association of organizations of your kind, see if there's an opportunity to do a marketing campaign where you all put some funds or some resources into a pot and launch a campaign that benefits everybody. And then finally, is this notion of identifying media sponsors. If you're doing a big event around your open house, or if you have some kind of gala or walkathon or some big opening, gallery exhibition, whatever the case may be that's tied into Partners in Preservation, if you're going to have a lot of eyeballs there, decision makers of any kind, then it behooves you to put together a media sponsorship proposal. This is very much just based off a corporate sponsorship proposal, but instead of looking for cash, you're looking for in-kind media support. And I have several different corporate sponsorship proposal templates that I can send out to anyone that's interested. So you could just email me directly for those. But basically just double the numbers of how much it costs for each level and say that it's in-kind media support instead of cash, and you've got yourself a media sponsor proposal. Go out there and talk to the different TV stations, radio stations, outdoor magazines, newspapers, etc. I know when I was running Craigslist Foundation, we were able to get $80,000 of television support alone from the local ABC affiliate, where they created our PSA, our public service announcement, and they actually aired it Friday nights during prime time between Dr. Phil. So something I wouldn't have spent money on, but certainly it was a huge benefit to us. And we also had some pretty big success in New York. So definitely don't be afraid to reach out to some media publications and see if they can produce your PSAs and air them.
The couple things to keep in mind about that. Number one, please don't forget, you can't approach anybody about the PIP contest or the campaign until April 26th. So there is an embargo in place. Please do remember that. Number two, it's easy to get picked up by media if you're doing something cool and creative and fun. If you're doing a fun open house or something really out of ordinary, and it does not have to be a high budget, high scale, something just creative and fun, they're much more likely to pick you up on that. And then a final point, any major media outreach you do, it would be good to kind of keep either Sari or Christine, but ideally Sari, in the loop from the National Historic Preservation Trust, just so you guys can make sure the messaging that's going out about the campaign itself is correct. You don't want to speak incorrectly and out of place about speaking for either American Express or for the National Historic Preservation Trust. So you want to be very careful about that. But Sari will be sending more info on media this week about existing work that's being done, and in general, just be on the safe side and run it by them.
That's great. Thank you so much, Ritu. And my understanding is that although there is a media embargo and you can't talk about the Partners in Preservation campaign, if you have some other event or some other function or something else with high visibility opportunities that a media publication might be interested in supporting you on, that you can reach out to them about that and really give them an opportunity to start working with you as an organization. And then once you're out of the embargo, then you're in a position to share additional news. I think Christine may have some comments on this.
Yep, I just wanted to underscore, obviously I know you guys are all aware of the embargo, but the email going out in the next day or two from Sari will show the media outlets that American Express and the National Trust is pursuing. And there's an email address there for NBooth, who's our PR firm. If you have any questions on media, media outreach, media sponsorships, the email for NBooth will be included in there, and they can definitely help answer any questions and make sure that you're not reaching out to sources that we're already reaching out to. And also it's good to keep them in the loop, and they can help just so they're aware of all the messages going out there.
That's great. Thanks so much, Christine. All right, so let's get back into it. And now we wanted to talk about sort of a level 2 opportunity, because this is something that would entail a cash budget, which can vary substantially in size. And also I should mention that American Express is underwriting a pretty extensive Facebook ad campaign to promote Partners in Preservation in general and drive votes in general. However, those of you with some financial resources and some time and capacity may be interested in running your own Facebook ads to promote your particular Partners in Preservation site and drive people to vote for your cause in particular. So we're going to do a brief how-to on what this would look like for you.
So there are a couple of things. We're going to go into Facebook ads just shortly and go over how you create an ad, what it looks like, how do you set a budget, how do you set targets, and so on. So we'll do that in just a moment. And after that, we anticipate having some time. So what I would do is I would just start thinking in the back of your mind, what is the number big challenge or frustration or concern that you have right now? So So we'll give everybody exactly 2 minutes to talk about what is it that they're struggling the most with. And we'll go with a small group, we'll go around, and anybody who has resources or ideas can share. If we have any feedback, we'll share. But I want to give you a heads up that we'll get into that exercise very shortly. So with that, let's get started with Facebook ads. Facebook ads are one of the most targeted and most precise way of acquiring Facebook fans. On Twitter, you can follow people and they'll follow you back in a pretty substantial number. But that can't be said for Facebook. Facebook is a very private network. Facebook is with people who know you, have gone to school with you, are your cousins, family, friends, coworkers, people you really know. So how do you get people you don't know but have the common bond of appreciation for the work you do or the field that you serve, whether it's jazz museum or Native American art, whatever your focus may be? How do you find people who you don't already know but have this common appreciation for the work you do? So that's really the premises for creating Facebook ads and bringing those new people into the fold of your organization and connecting them to your Facebook page or your website. And that's that many more people that you can speak to about your contest, about your campaign, and what this opportunity represents in terms of getting votes and making your cause more known. So number one thing is, before you start doing your ads, identify your goals. Why are you creating a Facebook ad? Are you creating a Facebook ad for driving traffic to your website? Are you trying to acquire more Facebook likes? Or are you trying to drive event registration? All of these things are very targeted, and you can do that using Facebook ads. You can drive the ads. So when you run an ad, on the right-hand side of your Facebook page, if you notice, there are lots of ads kind of popping by, usually about 3 on the right-hand side. You can choose when people click on those ads, when they speak to somebody and they find something relevant. You can decide whether you're driving them to an event page or to your Facebook page or to your website. So with that, you can target the audience. This is really important. You can target people by age, by gender, by location, education, their language. So you can say this ad should be shown to people who are 25 years of age to 50 years of age. Male or female, or doesn't matter. You can choose that if that's important or if that's relevant. You can choose a location. You can say a zip code, multiple zip codes. Or you could say within 50 miles, up to 50 miles. It can be 10 miles, it can be 20 miles, but up to 40 miles or 50 miles, whatever you choose, the maximum you can go is 50 miles. Within a certain radius of your organization's location, if that's who you're targeting. Or you can choose if you know people who care about and they're located, say, in Utah or in the mountains, or you can choose locations. And then the final piece is likes and interests. If you are in jazz museum, if you're a jazz music museum, you're going to want to choose likes and interests that are common with that. So any musician's music you have in your museum is number one. Anybody that has a similar sound or similar feel to it, that's another. People who are recording companies for that. So any kind of like or interests you can identify will help you target it to people that are very likely to be interested in the content you're showing. You're not interested in doing an ad campaign and showing it to people who don't care or have nothing to do with you, because that's wastage of your time, money, and ad budget. Your goal in a Facebook ad, especially when you're doing an fan acquisition campaign, is to show your content to a narrow target of people who are very likely already to like you based on the demographic and based on connections. So if I like a certain nonprofit, chances are people in my group will also either be open to it or liking it, because if I'm an active person, I'm already talking about that in my Facebook feed, and they have a sense of familiarity to that. So you can choose connections. You can choose show it to people who are already connected to your cause, or show it to people who are not connected to the cause already. So for example, somebody who's already connected to your cause, you can show an ad just to them saying if you have 5,000 people that like you, you show an ad only to people who like your page saying, this is time to support, or messaging very targeted to that. Or you can choose ads that are shown to people who have no connection with you yet, but are connected to you to 1 degree of separation. So it gets very precise, and that's what makes it a very, very efficient and useful tool for acquisition of new fans, and which is really important when you're in a time crunch and you want to spread your message to as many people as you can online to get the vote. I'm going to show you a few screenshots of what things that I just talked about look like, so you have a sense of familiarity. So these are how you target your ads. You can show it to anyone, only people connected to the organization, only people not connected to the organization, and then you can do advanced targeting. People who are connected to, and the advanced targeting is very interesting. You can target your ad to people who are connected to either a page, event, group, or app. And this is where you choose people with like-minded organizations. You may be selected out of 30 people who do the similar kind of work in your industry, but there are 30 other organizations that do, but you are the only one who is participating in the PIP contest. So you can choose those and put those names here and basically target it to all these people who already like something like you, not just you, but like something like you. Here you can choose men, women, all. You can even choose relationship status. If you are a ring seller, not in your case, but if you're an engagement ring seller, you'll want to market it to people who are in a relationship or single, not to people who are married or engaged. If you're a wedding planner, you want to show your services to an engaged person. So that's why I want to point that out, that in your case, it has no bearing, but that's why that is segmented the way it is on Facebook. And that's how it is used. So don't be surprised if you're engaged, if you start seeing a lot of ads for wedding planners and photographers and wedding planning related stuff. This is how it's targeted. Next on is you can choose education. You can choose people who work in certain organizations if that's of interest. But that's a very narrow, and it's used very rarely. But generally speaking, these connections, interested in, education are the common ones. And if you know your demographic really well, you can target it very precisely. Next is location. You can choose by country, state, city, or zip code. You can choose within a certain miles. As you can see, it's within, maximum is 50 miles. You can choose an age range. If you are working with an organization that has kids, or that has you're working with primarily senior citizens or a certain age group, no need to spend money and time showing your ad to people who are not even your demographic. So this is how you select that. In our case, we wanted to show this ad to everybody who liked major nonprofit or national nonprofit organizations, because people who care about causes, the big causes are the American Red Cross, the Foundation Center, Craigslist Foundation, Habitat for Humanity, Network for Good. You can choose organization names like that that represent the demographic that you're going after. For us, it's just anybody who's interested in nonprofit community. So that's why you see the names that you see. But in your case, it could be, if you are in Native American art, it could be everybody that's had anything to do with that, whether it's a curator, an artist, a sculptor, it's a museum, it's an institution, a think tank, a policy. Any of those will work. Okay. Let's see. Give me one moment. And then once you decide these parameters, you design your actual ad. An actual ad includes creating multiple versions of images, using different images, copy, headlines, and deciding what the audience is. And then test. Ads are very intuitive. There is not a precise science. There are a few things that are very precise about it, but different people respond to different ads. So create 10 to 12 different ad types and for each area that you're promoting, and see which one is getting traction, which one is getting clicked, and you promote that one and stop all the other ones that are not getting traction. And there's a Facebook Ads Manager. It lets you update all ads and make changes to multiple ads at the same time. So there are some tools there. In your ads, ask questions. Use simple and relevant images. Headshots are great. But the key point with images is make sure that the images are, one, very zoomed in. And if you're using people's images, they're looking right at the camera and really zoomed in. Those are the most effective images that we've seen so far. Anything that the key in Facebook ads is anything that gets people's attention and it gets people to stop for a second, or make a statement or question or something that stops people and makes them, oh wow, I didn't know that. Oh wow, that's the case. I don't think so. Either agree with you strongly or disagree with you strongly. You need to find like you need to get a strong reaction. There's so much information that's passing through. You don't want to be one of those and be glossed over. You really want to be, oh wow, just getting their attention is very important. So create copy, create images that invoke that kind of reaction. Include your name and key information. It's very important not to just create an ad that doesn't even have your organization name. Your ad is going to run for a long period of time, whether it's 2 days or a week or 10 days. You want to subconsciously be dropping name and making sure that name is taking place in their subconscious. It's really important to use your name and key information. If you're asking for an event, make sure there is a date and a place where that event is taking place, whether it's the city or the name of an arena or venue, make sure it's there. If you are asking for a vote, clearly say that and link that to the vote page. And highlight benefits and impact if you can. Make statements about save or restore, things that speak to people, and connect the impact, connect your vote and connect your ask to the impact that that's going to have. So this is what a design page looks like. It shows you where the ad is going. So number one is it's going to Social Media for Nonprofits Facebook page. If it were going to a website, it's going to show you a website address. But I was directing this ad to our Facebook page. It is, are we promoting the organization in general or are we promoting a specific post? You can promote a specific post where you're asking for a vote or you're saying you're mapping the impact of that vote to the impact. So then you can, if you're writing about what winning this contest will do for your organization or for the community or for that industry, if you have a very thoughtful post about that, you can even have an ad that specifically promotes that post. In this case, as you can see, it has very, very small. So you basically have maybe 1.5 sentence space. Use as little text as you can. People don't read or respond well to text. Use images that are really zoomed in and catchy and fun and interactive and not just very staid and stoic pictures. In this case, we use Beth Kanter's image, who is one of the most leading thought leaders and also voices in social media for nonprofits. She's a consultant. She has a fun picture with a cowboy hat, a pink cowboy hat. We use that, and that image gets a lot of attraction. So here, this is where you design a Facebook ad. Let's see. Give me one moment. Excuse me for just a moment. Excuse me for one moment. Sorry about that.
Pardon the technical difficulties. Let's see this. Huh. I've never seen this happen before.
That's actually behind.
Weird. Okay.
Sorry about that. And then final piece on Facebook ads, review and refine. Use the reports to see when it's getting clicked, how often it's getting clicked, which ads are getting clicked. Learn more about your demographic or your audience on Facebook Insights page and see what's the age group of people who like your page already. What's their gender? What's their location? Take a look at that and target it to that, because that's where you already have traction. So don't just rely on what you think is your audience. Rely on the data that you get from Facebook Insights to see which section of the population is responding to your organization. And then see how these changes play out. If it works, do more of that. If it doesn't work, do less of that.
And also, to the extent you have the capacity to create customized ads that are different for men or for women or for people in Manhattan versus the Bronx, and work that targeting into your messaging, that's always going to be helpful. But ultimately, no matter what you think is going to work, take a look, and look at the data to see what's actually driving results.
All right. So we're going to do a quick check-in for this week. And after that check-in, we'll give the mic to you and talk about what is your biggest challenge. So with that, by a show of hands, if you could show me, how many of you have how many of you have claimed your Foursquare venue or created a check-in? Alrighty, one.
We got Amy and Carl. Excellent.
Dennis,
Michael, Alyssa. Great. And Sari will be sending out the link to yesterday's webinar, where we sort of did a pretty detailed walk through Foursquare in particular. So if you weren't able to join us yesterday, we certainly encourage you to take a look at the webinar we did in regards to integrating on and offline efforts and really looking at events and how you can use social media to drive their success, framed around the campaign in particular. How about the next one? Have any of you created a Facebook event page, even if it's not live yet? Yesterday we talked about creating a Facebook event page and setting it up as a draft so that when the campaign goes live and the media embargo is lifted, that you're able to just publish that immediately. Has anybody created a Facebook event page yet? All right, looks like we have a growth opportunity for everyone here. And finally, how many of you have a hashtag that you're using on Twitter for your organization? Possibly not yet for the campaign, but looks like Amy's got one. This is, again, as we talked about today and especially got into yesterday, great, Alyssa and Michael, hashtags are a really wonderful way to sort of unify a conversation around a particular topic and around your organization, and to get you a lot of additional followers just because people start paying attention to those. So we hope you'll consider doing those three. And then as far as today's action plan, this one, because it was much more us going into a variety of different tools, these are very much some of the sort of level 2 tools, where, as I said earlier, we wouldn't recommend, diving in the deep end of Google Plus until you really are holding it down with Facebook and Twitter, for example, just because they have bigger audiences, and more established communities. So we don't necessarily want to leave you with an action plan today. However, we would like you to put a little bit of time and thought into some of the things you heard about today, and of those, which makes sense for your organization, which can be implemented and really help you with the upcoming campaign, and then create a plan around that. And certainly we're happy to help you do that in the context of our upcoming coaching calls. We'll also, as I mentioned, Friday, be going into our final webinar where we look at Storify, Pinterest, Instagram, which just got bought for $1 billion by Facebook, etc. So we'll take a look at some additional level 2 platforms now that we've kind of covered the basics. So with that, let's transition.
Yeah, and what we're going to do with this is we're going to go ahead and unmute your mics. We only need 12, 13 people, so it should not be a problem. If you have a background noise in your case, I will ask that you go ahead and mute yourself, but we're going to unmute everybody so we can go in line and just go, we can call people out by their first name, alphabetical by first name, and go from there. So,
and again, what we really want each of you to speak to here, we're going to give you each just a couple minutes. You can introduce yourself in a sentence or so, but the more important thing we want to hear from each of you is what is the single greatest challenge or obstacle that you're facing in your efforts right now as it relates to your campaign, as it relates to your social media efforts. Of course, if you have a burning question, then you're more than welcome. To answer that as well.
Unmuted.
Let's get started. We're going to start with Amy Buncaro. Amy, are you there with us?
Yes. Hi. How are you, Darian?
Doing great. Thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
So Amy, tell us a little bit about what you're up to, and is there anything that we and the rest of your colleagues on the phone might be able to help with?
Well, we're focusing primarily on using Facebook and Twitter because we're just not a large enough staff to really handle too many other platforms effectively. But we're going to dive into the Facebook event and the whole bit, full throttle. We're really working to try to build our Facebook followers just generally at other events. We're doing things where we're giving out, a free puzzle, and we have a Facebook sign-up booth ready for people who don't have a QR scanner. We have laptops set up and things like that. Our biggest concern and my biggest worry is that we will have a decent amount of followers on Facebook and Twitter and whatnot. Will they actually vote? We have pretty creative ideas on how we want to get the Vote For Us daily message out in a way that's not boring, but I'm just worried whether or not they're really going to vote for us. That's my nightmare every night now.
That's great. Thanks so much for your question, Amy. And I was unmuting everyone, but we were getting some background noise. So if people can just raise their hands if they have any comments, and meanwhile, Ritu and I are happy to share some of our thoughts for everyone's question. But for now, let's start with Carl. It seems like he's got some thoughts. Go ahead, Carl.
Well, I agree. I think, it takes some work to get people to like your Facebook, and I'm nervous about it because there's so many steps to go into the site and to vote that if it's difficult to get people to like you, it's going to be so much more difficult to get people to vote and to do it every day. Right? That is, I think, is a challenge.
All right. Well, let's hear from Christine directly since she's got a really great vantage point on this. Go ahead, Christine. Christine?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can.
I had muted my own phone. Sorry about that. I was just saying, this is Christine from American Express. I think your concerns are valid. The people liking you doesn't necessarily mean they'll also vote or that they'll vote every day. But I think as much as you can to build the community now, and building the community, not just in getting up the number of likes, but all the things that social media for nonprofits have been walking you guys through on these webinars on once you get the likes, doing the messaging calendar, posting out regularly, things like all the things to kind of increase your influence in your network and increases your chances of popping up based on the Facebook algorithm. I think those will lead to votes, although of course we can't really say what that number ratio is. Again, I had mentioned that Sari will be sending out an email in the next day or two with an update for the site. One of the things in that update will be we'll be showing a tech demo of what the voting process will look like. So that will be demystified a bit. And based on feedback we heard from prior year's PIP, we made the voting as simple as possible and cut out as many steps as possible. People can definitely vote for your site, although they may not have liked your particular site. Although if they have liked your site, your Facebook page, that will make it easier. They will hopefully see more messages as you send them out about remember to vote today, things like that.
That's great. That's really helpful, Christine. And I know, just from our perspective, voting is quite easy. And so it isn't something that takes a lot of time. And in fact, I think it's something you could run an entire campaign around from a standpoint of, spend 10 seconds, help us win $1 million. So I think obviously you're going to want to try out the system yourself, especially since it's going to get updated. But our understanding is that it's a very streamlined system. It's not a lot to ask in terms of people's time commitment to vote, and they're in a position to really transform your efforts. And so, and Amy, the other thing I'll mention is that if you go back to the very first webinar that we did on online contests and how to win an online contest, we really talked about not just the recruitment phase, which is what we dove deeper into today, But the second stage of what we talked about was engage. So once you have an audience, a base of people following you on Facebook, on Twitter, in your newsletter, whatever the case may be, how do you get them to take action? And there's a pretty good chunk of time we devoted to that whole process of engagement as well as activation. How do you really turn the most important supporters into Supermans and get them to become your campaign captains and things like that? But ultimately, you're not asking people for a lot of time, and it does stand to really transform your efforts. So hopefully that combination will be effective at driving people to action.
And next up is Barbara. Barbara, I'm going to say the next up also so that person is prepared. So it's Barbara Dolenczak and then Carl Rutberg. So Barbara, just share with us what's keeping you up, or if you have any comments or anything you're struggling with.
Our main problem, I think, is we are all volunteers. We have no staff, and we're all kind of Luddites as well. There's not one person in our area who is on Twitter. So we're not even bothering that. We're going to stick with Facebook. We've done a lot with Facebook so far, but we need to expand. We don't know quite how to turn our Facebook place into a group, how to share everything. We're trying to build up a huge email list so that we can send out blasts and so forth. But we're going to do a call-in tomorrow morning with one of you to try to get a little bit more sophisticated on this. So if you have any advice for us, we would be really happy to have it.
Sure, and I mean, we're definitely looking forward to our upcoming call tomorrow, but I wasn't sure if there was sort of a specific question in there. I get that folks aren't already on Twitter, that you'll be focusing on Facebook, but was there a specific question that the group and that we may be able to help you with today?
Well, is there any way, I mean, we have a City Island Nautical Museum group, but we can't combine it with the place. Is there any way to do that?
You're talking about you have multiple Facebook presence. So you have one for the group, and so you have a group and a page, correct?
Yes, the page is active, the group not so much.
So there's actually not a way to combine the two. What we recommend is sunsetting one. Actually, let me take a step back. If you have multiple presence, if there are 2 pages, then the recommendation is definitely to keep the correct and accurate one and sunset the other one. But when there's a group, the purpose of a group is very different than the purpose of a page. A page is an open place for creating awareness, conversation, sharing information about your cause, whereas a group can be a closed or an open group for like-minded individuals to share information. And a group is used more actively when you're doing practitioners group, whether it's social media professionals or museum professionals. It's more catered towards that. So the best thing you could do is to post in the group periodically, to ask people to like you and connect with you on the Facebook page, and say you're providing more accurate and current information on that, and group was created ahead of time. So every couple months, post something about that and encourage people to move over. But there really isn't an electronic way of merging that.
Okay, that's great. Okay, that's just what I need to know. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thanks for your question, Barbara. All right, so we're going to move on to Carl Rutberg, and then after him we have Dana Friedman. Carl, do you have a question for us that we might be able to help you with?
Yeah, it was the same comment I made earlier about the voting process. I'm looking forward to, checking out those steps, the specific steps.
Wonderful. Well, we look forward to your feedback on that and to our coaching calls, so thank you for joining us today. Let's move on to Dana Friedman, and then we're going to hear from Dennis Tom. Dana, do you have a question we might be able to help you with today? Crickets. All right. How about Dennis? Are you there, Dennis Tom? All right. We're moving on to Alyssa Moorhead, and I know Alyssa. Wait a second. Is that Dennis? Oh, okay. I know that Alyssa, you had asked a question before about Facebook ads and how much they cost. Basically, there is no set cost. There's a recommended amount that that you can bid on any given keyword and you can set your budget for the day, but there is no sort of minimum that you have to spend. So in any case, beyond that, Alyssa, if you have any other questions for us that we may be able to help you with.
Or is it Elisa for Weeksville?
Yep. Oh, sorry, I thought it was Alyssa.
Moorhead.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if there was another one. Yeah. I mean, challenges. I guess our biggest challenge is similar to other people is staff trying to delegate across different disciplines so that we have kind of a diversity of information that we're putting out in the world and that we're able to be conversant about. So it's that's taking up quite a bit of time. And then the other piece for us is the analytics piece, just trying to make sure that we understand it and that we're sort of reacting to it dynamically, because I'm not sure that we are right now. And yeah, and then another sort of challenge that I don't know if other people are having is that we've been putting up a lot of things across different topics, and we'll get a lot of likes or some likes sometimes, but very seldom shares. And like today we tried out asking people to share something in particular because it was about a teen jobs opportunity, but other than that, we're not getting a lot of that, which is what I understand helps with your analytics or the algorithm. So I was wondering how people were dealing with that.
So let's see if anybody else wants to raise their hand, if anyone has comments, and then certainly Ritu and I have some feedback that we can share here. And it looks like Dennis does, although I got a note from him saying he doesn't have a mic. So Dennis, if you want to send me a message, I can go ahead and read that to the group. Otherwise, we're happy to share some commentary on Alyssa's points here. Number one is, as it relates to analytics, I talked earlier today about Google Analytics and Google for Nonprofits. One of the platforms that Google makes available through Google for Nonprofits, which is, I'll send out the URL right now, /nonprofits. Is Google Analytics, which is a free tool you can use as a nonprofit that will really help you understand where your traffic is coming from, how long people are sticking around your site, where you're losing them, etc. And also the other powerful analytics tool that I would mention is Facebook Insights, and Ritu spoke to that earlier when she was talking about Facebook ads and Facebook in general. So those are two really great tools, and both Facebook and Google have a good website for nonprofits, which is just their URL /nonprofits, and you can look up tutorials on Google Analytics as well as Facebook Insights. As far as your other question,
and I think I want to make sure we heard you correctly. You talked a little bit about posting on Facebook and people not sharing it, just liking it and not commenting it, correct?
Right, not sharing much and not having a lot of comments, mostly just likes to different posts.
What we recommend doing the most is engaging your staff and your community of key volunteers. What happens in Facebook is, if you want to drive engagement, you first of all obviously have to have good content and engaging content, and something that you're not asking a question or making a statement and asking a question that's rhetorical. It's actually a question that people need answered. One of the most common mistakes I see is people answer a question and then leave the question hanging in there to kind of just drive engagement. So make sure you're not answering the question that you're asking in the same post is number one. Or frame it in such a way saying, this is how we do it. We are curious to see how you're solving this challenge. That's one. But when we say about employing your community of key volunteers, what we are asking you to do is have your staff members and key volunteers seed the conversation. And it's okay for staff members to jump in and say something about what's your favorite piece of art, or what's your favorite tool or something, and for staff members to say, I work here and my suggestion is this, or answering questions. So when there are different variety of voices, it starts to speed the pool of conversation. This is something about generally conversations, but definitely online, is people don't like to be the first one making a comment. So it's really important to make it vibrant by seeding the conversation, putting it in a way that it rotates within your staff and board members and key volunteers, who you could send an email saying, hey, we're going to post 3 times a week, something engaging, and we ask that each of you take just 1 minute to like, share, or comment. When something is getting shared, everybody's like, oh, it's something so exciting, everybody's sharing, and they're more likely to share it. So unfortunately, that's just one of the ways to kind of get around that, is to seed the conversation and continue to keep working on your messaging.
And 2 comments I want to make to build on that. Certainly seeding the conversation is key, and Ritu mentioned this notion of key volunteers. We've talked in the past in a few of the different webinars about the notion of really having campaign captains, where you're enlisting a group of key supporters, volunteers, staff members, board, whatever the case may be, and then sending them 1 or maybe 2 emails a week with, here's 3 things you can do to help us win $1 million. Certainly spread the word and tell people to vote. Go to our Twitter page, here's the link, and retweet at least a couple messages. But one of those should generally be, here's a link to our Facebook page, please go there and like, comment, or share at least 2 or 3 of our posts. And just basically ask them. The other way to ask is just to do that explicitly in the post. So the research that's been done on Twitter in particular shows that if you include the words please retweet at the beginning of your message, or just PLS and then capital R, capital T, which is sort of abbreviation for please retweet, about 20 to 30% more people will retweet your message. So with Twitter, that's a lot more acceptable than with Facebook. But certainly, to the example you mentioned earlier, if it's something you really want to take off and have people spread, you can include, please pass this along or spread the word so that they go ahead and do that in greater numbers. So I hope that was helpful, Alyssa.
Yeah, very helpful. The seeding is something we didn't really think about.
Great. Thanks so much.
We have a question from Dennis. His mic isn't working, so I'm going to go ahead and ask it for him. And I think Christine can answer that from Amex. The question is there a mobile voting site, or is there a mobile-friendly voting site? So I'm going to let Christine answer that one.
Yep, there will be, as long as the mobile device is web-enabled, people can vote either on their computer or on a web-enabled mobile device. And that will be part of the tech walkthrough as well. There's 2 URLs that people can go to, which is either partnersinpreservation.com or facebook.com/partnersinpreservation.
Okay.
Great. Thanks so much.
And Dennis, having that poster that Christine sent over with QR code built into it might be a quick way to direct people to the voting site. Because if people have to type partnersinpreservation.com, some people are likely to make mistakes in spelling or take a long time. But kind of encouraging people to use QR code might be a very quick way to just get right to the site without making mistakes.
And Christine, one other question that we got from Dana, who also doesn't have a microphone and wasn't able to ask this on the call, but they're wondering how much are they able to say about the upcoming competition without breaking the embargo? My understanding is they're not really allowed to talk about it at all, at least publicly. But can you speak to that, please?
Yep, officially, anything that's public knowledge already, so anything that was on the press release saying we're coming to New York, is already out there in the public. And I would say, so as not to give away your own participation, if you speak about it as if you speak about anything else that you've seen in the news or through existing channels. For instance, if you saw that announcement on Historic House Trust website, for example, and you're a member, and it makes sense for you to retweet or repost things from HHT. Basically, if you would have talked about it through these channels anyway, even if you weren't involved, it's fine. If that doesn't answer your question and it gets into any kind of gray area or you're still not sure, definitely reach out to Sari with your particular specifics of your question, and she can help guide you.
Great. Thanks so much, Christine. And it looks looks like Carl has a comment that he wanted to share with the group, possibly in response to something else that was said.
Well,
Carl,
I'm
are you
just
there?
curious, how are you going to be able to monitor? Yes.
Okay.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just curious how you'll be able to monitor the 1 vote per person per day.
It's tied to email address.
But what if I have several email addresses?
I mean, there are going to be people who game the system, which is unfortunate. I mean, people who want to, who have like 5 email addresses and they want to log in and log out and log in through each of their emails. We can't really prevent that from happening. But the logic in it is it's tied by email address. And I hope that doesn't lead into, can you then encourage people to vote from different email addresses? And I would say no, that would go against the spirit of the competition.
All right. Now, I'm just curious on how it was based. And I guess the same thing is through Facebook then. You can go through your 1 Facebook account per day.
Right, and I think I'm not the tech person on here, so I can't answer definitively, but I think that 1 vote per user per day will actually, if you used 1 email address to log in for your Facebook account, that is probably the same email address you'll use if you decide, instead of voting on Facebook, to vote on the microsite. So basically, unless someone is really trying to game the system, they won't be able to vote on Facebook that day and then go in and vote on the normal website as well, unless they're trying very, very hard to kind of like find the loopholes in it.
That's great. Thanks so much, Christine. And I think we have time for one more question. I know we're hoping to get to Kira Garcia, Michael Cogswell, and Rose Morgan. So Kira, Michael, or Rose, if any of you have a question, do you want to raise your hand through the platform, and then we can call on you. And while we're doing that, I just wanted to quickly mention, Dennis Tom had asked if you're allowed to incorporate a contest tied into voting. Yes, we would actually encourage that. We talked again about the campaign captains and about enlisting a group of key supporters and allies and volunteers where you have a leaderboard and where, you can keep track based on the honor system and based on what they're reporting to you, how many folks that they've gotten to vote. We'll publish those numbers and get them to compete against each other so that you benefit in the process. So thanks for that question. And I think that is pretty much our time today. Just checking one last time with Kira, Michael, and Rose. It does look like Michael has a question, so we're going to give you the last word here, Michael. Go for it. What can we help you with?
Yeah, well, not a question. I just want to say thanks for the webinar, and my concerns are the same as my colleagues. Capacity. Can we do everything that needs to be done? But we're working on some strategies to do that, and I really liked your label, Darian, about the empty store phenomenon, because that's something that we have experienced in the past, but I think we've rounded the corner on that. And my other concerns, like my colleagues, was engagement. I mean, we're going to have a lot of friends, a lot of followers, but is every person going to vote every day? That's a big challenge.
Yeah, and realistically, Michael, the answer is no. You can't expect every person to vote every day, but you can certainly try, and you can maximize that percentage of engagement, of participation. And again, as Ritu mentioned, the way to maximize that is a combination of 2 things. One is making it easy for them, sending them a link, sending them template copy that they can cut and paste, etc. And the other is tying their contribution to impact. Mapping their time, the energy they take, even if it's just a couple seconds to click a link and go vote, but why should they care? And it's not just so you can win money, it's what are you going to do with that money that's going to make the community a better place to live in, that's going to advance an issue that they care about, and making it really concrete and personal so that people can understand exactly why it's worth their time and their energy to get engaged. And hopefully between the 2 of those, you can really drive the kind of success and engagement that you're looking for regardless of capacity.
And just a final point, really 2 great points made by Darian, but just one final point. Creativity goes a really long way in this. Cute things and creative things, something that gets people's attention goes a really long way. So in addition to what Darian said, look at getting out of the box kind of ideas. Look at things that you can do differently that don't require a lot of resources. It just requires a different mindset in engaging and making it fun for people and making it passionate and getting them engaged. So be on the lookout for those ideas. Have a whiteboard and throw ideas and try them and see what works. And if it does, great. If it doesn't, move on to the next one. But be open to trying a lot of different things.
That's a great point, Ritu. We are indeed in the attention economy. So how are you going to get people's attention and drive them to action? We are going to look in particular at how several different tools, including Storify, Pinterest, and Instagram, are really used to do just that in our next and final webinar. That will again be this Friday at 11:30 a.m. Up until 1 p.m. So we hope you can join us for that. Sari will be sending out the links for all of the videos for the past webinars we've done, as well as for this one, which we will be posting shortly. And if you haven't already gotten in touch with us regarding those free coaching calls, please, we are at your disposal. We are very much honored and excited to help advance your efforts, especially as it relates to this really exciting Partners in Preservation campaign. So we are very thankful to American Express for making this campaign possible and also for underwriting our support of all of your efforts. Thank you all so much. Have a great day, and we will look forward to talking with you again very soon.